Hey everyone, welcome back to Today in Tech. I'm Julia Beauchamp and I'm here with Macworld Executive Editor Michael Simon, as well as Computer World Executive Editor Ken Mingus. And today we are going to be diving into two big wins. One big win for sort of mobile at large and another big win for Apple. But before we dive into what we're going to be talking about today, we are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. So if you have any questions or comments while we're discussing, please do leave them in the live chat or the live comments. And we're going to try our best to get back to you while we're recording live. If we miss you, we'll try our best also to get back to you after the fact. But answering your question live is definitely the priority here. So, like I said, two big wins, one for mobile in general, one for Apple. The first big win for mobile in general, the FCC announced that it's going to auction off previously reserved bands and previously reserved 5G bandwidth. And this is there's going to be an opportunity for carriers to bid on these bands. And in general, it seems like it is probably going to be good for 5G rollout in general because it's mid. These are going to be mid frequency bands, I'm pretty sure. But in general, exciting news. So, Mike, I'm hoping that I can throw it to you first. And can you just tell us a little bit like where we are on 5G rollout? I know it's something that we've been talking about for, a year now.
More than a year, yeah.
Yeah, to multiple.
But it only really mattered when the iPhone got 5G.
And it still largely doesn't quite matter. I mean, all right, so every major carrier has some offering that includes 5G.
Exactly.
Verizon offers a nationwide 5G with every plan so whether you're on unlimited or not, you get access to their 5G nationwide network, which is, relatively large. But it's not really anything to speak of as far as speeds go. You're getting basically 4G plus, maybe not even. Like in some, like I have it here, and I never know if I'm on LTE or 5G because they're basically the same.
Hey, Mike, let me just ask real quick before you get into this, because I'm curious about this. Apparently here in North Carolina, where I am, we now have 5G as well. And so when I've been out and about and my phone is accessing 5G, I've done a couple of quick downloads.
What's your carrier? Quick.
AT&T.
Okay.
AT&T. And if you look at their map, it would indicate that there is no 5G around here, but the phone is clearly reading 5G, not 5G.
5G. Okay. I was going to ask that. Yeah.
No, okay. It's 5G. And the download speeds are like 120, 130, upload speeds in the 40s, sometimes 30s, 40s, 50s. That's faster than 4G, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or is it?
Yeah, 4G. Okay. AT&T has a very fast 4G network, as does Verizon. They're generally around average 60, 70 maybe.
Okay.
So if you're getting sustained 120, that's good. That's better than what I'm getting here. Okay. So that's the other part of this. Every carrier, it's not. So when you got a 4G phone back when that launched, you pretty much knew what you were getting with each carrier. It was way faster than 3G for one. And for another, they all kind of used the same spectrum and they all kind of delivered, similar speeds. Verizon was always a little bit better because of the way they handled aggregation and stuff. But it was, relatively standard. You got between 50 and 70 or so on an average download cycle. With 5G, it's vastly different. Some 5Gs like Verizon are piggybacking on their existing LTE network and bandwidth and spectrum and giving you, slightly faster sometimes speeds. With that, they also offer ultra wideband, which you usually have to pay for. You always have to pay for right now. That's ridiculously fast, like gig plus fast, sometimes close approaching 2 gigs a second. And that is reserved, one, to small little areas around the country and also to higher paying plans. Also, if you live in a rural area that just got 4G, you can forget about getting ultra wideband. It's not happening. Cities will have it. The big appeal of that is once we ever get back to congregating again in groups, like sports stadiums and concerts and stuff. If you've ever tried to send a picture that you take at a concert, forget it. It's not going anywhere because you have 25,000 people that are using the same network right now, and it's just jammed. The prospect of 5G will free that up and also give you faster speeds. With this auction that the FCC is doing, carriers will now be able to build out more toward the realism of what 5G will be. They don't have to piggyback on their existing spectrums, and they can build it out, in the US, because we haven't really gotten there yet. T-Mobile's the closest. They have like a true nationwide 5G network that's a dedicated band, and it's pretty quick. But T-Mobile historically is the lesser of the three carriers. Well, there was four. Now it's T-Mobile and Sprint, and they're working on combining those two. But it's usually Verizon, AT&T, and then T-Mobile is third when it comes to speeds. So I would think that they're going to be pretty aggressive in the bidding of what the FCC is offering. But this is not something we're going to see this year. It's not going to be something we're going to see for a while. I mean, if once you're able to use a certain spectrum for 5G, I mean, you still got to build out all the equipment, and a lot of the existing equipment in this country is run by companies that we're not allowed to use anymore.
Right. That's a problem.
That's another issue. Yeah. So that stuff has to be torn down and changed. Also, there's a bit of a conspiracy theory against 5G right now that's making its way around the world, and that complicates things too.
What?
Well, because people are breaking towers and like burning them down because they think that it's like mind control stuff, and there's a lot against it at the moment. However, there is an infrastructure in place. No matter what carrier you're using, your iPhone or Android phone can get 5G, and if you're lucky enough to be in one of Verizon's or AT&T's ultra wideband sections, which are very small, but they do exist all around the country, you're going to get really, really fast Wi-Fi, better than Wi-Fi speeds.
Just to pick up on what you're saying, Michael, this goes back to the whole, the genesis of 5G several years back, and it was that whole chicken and egg situation where, the carriers wanted to talk about 5G. That's why AT&T made up this whole 5GE thing, and then
they did that with 4G too. To be fair,
I know. But okay, so chicken and egg. So the carriers wanted to bring people in, cell phones, etc. So they started talking about 5G, but until Android, I think, started with the 5G chips in the devices 2 or 3 years ago, there wasn't anybody to use it. There was no device. There was nothing, So now you've got the devices, and the reason I was sort of joking about Apple is that after the iPhone arrived last fall offering 5G, that's another spur to get the carriers to build out the infrastructure.
It instantly became the biggest,
the top
selling phone.
Yeah, 5G. Yeah. And so now what you've got is the government, basically freeing up bandwidth in an effort to push this. If I remember correctly from one of the stories I saw, this is bandwidth that had been reserved for the military.
Right.
So clearly the government is trying to make a push here, and you're not going to be able to build an infrastructure and towers and networks if you don't have the bandwidth. So it's like all of these things kind of roll together over time to ideally get us to a much more robust 5G network in the US, at least, say in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. And it's worth saying that we're kind of lagging the rest of the world in this.
Right.
We need to catch up quick.
Yeah. And this is ultimately, it seems like a move that's going to be great for your everyday consumer, but also your enterprise consumer. I mean, 5G is ultimately going to be a hugely helpful tech development.
Well,
so
more than the average iPhone user. It's gonna open up all sorts of possibilities for businesses, for self-driving cars, for things that connect to networks all the time. And yes, it'll be cool to do a FaceTime call without lag and to download a movie in like 10 seconds.
Right.
But that's not the real promise of 5G.
Well, to your point, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier about just doing some speed tests informally here in North Carolina, in Raleigh. If you're a worker who no longer goes into the office, and that may be a lot of workers over the next few years as companies figure out post-pandemic,
definitely,
you work from wherever you are. If you've got 5G access, I mean, that's effectively broadband access, and therefore you can do what you need to do. Zoom calls, collaboration, teams that work all around the world, and it doesn't really matter where you are. It reminds me of like 20 years ago when broadband first arrived, cable broadband, and suddenly people could do what they needed to do, other than in addition to downloading movies really quickly, they could do work from home. And this is the next step on that. So it is exciting when you think about it.
Yeah, you don't have to run to like a Starbucks,
or
McDonald's or something anymore. Yeah, you could just pop on a park bench and boom, you're online, and it's as if you're at an office.
And that's a great point too, as just someone who has been obviously on, as we all have been, Zoom calls all day long, but also sharing my roommates and I are all in the same network. They're also on Zoom calls all day long. And I know a ton of other people are in this situation, whether it's roommates, their kids are in online school, their spouses, partners are also at work all day long. It's going to make a huge difference when there's not going to be hopefully as many latency issues with 5G. If there's, a lot of people can be on it at once, but I also just have pretty bad Wi-Fi. So that's also a problem.
I mean, it's not just you. I mean, bad Wi-Fi. I mean, I'm lucky to live in a major city on the East Coast, and I have gigabit speeds.
Right.
If there's a lot of this country that don't, it's not even so much that they can't afford it. They don't even have access to it if they want to. They could afford it.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I've got access to it. I'm living in a big city in the East Coast too, and it still is not that great. So it's going to be really important. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, just one quick final thought on the 5G thing. The analogy to me is the more spectrum you have, the fatter the pipe, the broader the bandwidth, the more you can roll it out. So that's why this spectrum sale is important, because it really does. It just opens the door wider for bigger and more robust networks. So it's a good thing.
Yeah. And importantly, also a popular thing. It's not like there was a lot of pushback to this. I mean, the FCC voted unanimously to do it. It's ultimately going to be a good thing. So if you guys don't have any other more thoughts on 5G, I think we can dive into the other topic of the day, which I hinted at the beginning is a really big win for Apple. So both of you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in iOS 14.5, Apple's finally going to release this app tracking and data privacy feature that basically is going to force users to consent to having apps and websites track their track what they're doing while they're on their devices. And this is obviously huge for data privacy and for user privacy. And French regulators basically upheld the fact that Apple can do this and that it is a good thing and it's not anti-competitive. They said that, they can take a look at it down the line if it becomes a problem and if they think it's becoming anti-competitive. But ultimately, again, another pretty good thing for user privacy and for everyday users. So it is 14.5, right? When's that coming out?
Well, what 14.5 does is basically forces developers to use it. It launched in iOS 14, and Apple delayed the mandatory rollout. Some developers are using it already, and so we don't know when that's coming out. It's looking more like April now. I was thinking maybe late March, but possibly April. We're already in the tail end of March. Apple probably isn't having an event in March, and my guess is the release of 14.5 would be tied to the release of the iPad Pro. That's heavily rumored to come out within the next couple of weeks. So maybe April, but yeah, it's coming soon. I think they're in the 4th beta already, so it's nearly ready to be released. And what that does is it'll give you a pop-up when you log into an app for the first time after either after an update or after a new install. It'll say, do you want, I don't know the exact language, but it'll basically ask if you want to allow this app to track you for ad purposes. The app itself, it'll still, like the app developers will still be able to get user data for their own purposes. What they won't be able to do is sell that user data or whatever partners they have with third-party tracking apps that are, fairly, I don't know, it's big business. They're all over the place. And we don't really know on our iPhone who's doing what and when. Yes, there are toggles and things that we can shut them off. No one really knows or realizes that they can be done. No one's diving into the settings to really do that, not knowing. But most people aren't diving into the settings to do that. Now you're going to get a pop-up that says, hey, do you want to give this app access? You can ignore it You can say no, you can say yes. The studies that have been done based on that data that they've received already, which is it's a relatively small subset of developers who have implemented this already. But for the ones that have, I think it was something like 99.2% of users have either explicitly said no or not explicitly said yes.
Gotcha.
So it's not a good thing for companies that rely on advertisers to Google, Facebook,
yeah.
and a lot of other smaller companies that we don't know about or we don't know as well. So, I know they make a lot of Android phones. I know Apple has a small market share. But when you look at the overall picture of people, what they're spending money on, Apple's iPhone, the class of people that use, they're always at the top as far as profits go, and that's why businesses, Google, Facebook, they want to be on the iPhone and they want to have a big presence on the iPhone and they want to have all this data, and Apple is basically making it real hard for them to get it now. And Google and Facebook have both warned, both publicly and privately, to investors, like, hey, this could have a serious impact on both monetarily and our business at large, our mobile business at large.
Well, it also plays to Apple's pitch, which is that we protect your data, we protect your privacy, and I mean it's a smart move on Apple's part that goes just beyond the altruistic idea of protecting privacy. It does sort of throw a monkey wrench into some of the things that Facebook, Google, other companies are doing, and it allows Apple to position itself as this purveyor of privacy. And that was the thing about the French decision. I mean, you think about it. Europeans tend to look at regulation more stringently than we do in the U.S. And so for this French agency to basically say, we don't see a problem here with what Apple's doing. We're going to keep investigating, but we think that what they're doing is kosher. And so that's going to give Apple some strength here in the U.S. as it tries to fight back, because of course you've got Facebook and Google, arguing that this is a bad move for users, and Apple's like, no, this is all about transparency and letting people choose for themselves.
Right.
And as Mike said, there are certainly toggles and things you can turn off and on an iPhone or an iPad, I guess. But those are blunt force. That's sort of like everything's on or everything's
Google
off.
offers them too, but they're not explicitly in your face. It's not
You
so
have to
much
go
that
looking for
they're not transparent. It's that they're not, or it's not so much that they're hidden as much as they're not transparent. Like they're, if you want to find them, they're easy to find. You just got to go looking for them.
Right.
And yeah, I would have been very surprised, particularly in France, in the EU, and what we've seen, the decisions come out of them, out of that. Google has paid lots of money in fines and things. The GDPR was a huge move that they made a couple of years ago. I would have been shocked if they said, "Oh yeah, this is bad. Apple's wrong here." that would have been a surprising decision. So I'm not surprised at all. I'm sure that there will be appeals. The big question will be when the case inevitably appears in U.S. courts to see what happens there, because Google's a U.S. company, Facebook's a U.S. company, Apple's a U.S. company. That's when it'll be interesting to see what that decision or how it looks. I mean, we could be years away, but
what would the argument even be, from a competitor, from non-Apple? How can you argue that giving users access or the ability to make this decision? What's a legal argument saying that's bad or wrong? I mean, they're saying it's anti-competitive? Is that sort of what
that's exactly what it was? Yeah. Which, it's a spurious argument, but they try.
Yeah, good luck arguing that one,
Yeah, I'm looking at everything that I've seen has pretty much said that competitors, advertisers are saying that this is unfair and anti-competitive. But I think that, while we're on the topic of competition, I'm kind of wondering who's next. Is another device maker going to adopt these rules, do you think? I mean, Ken, like you mentioned, it fits very squarely with Apple's with Apple has always saying, your privacy is in mind and we really care about your privacy, but every device maker says that. So I'm wondering if is Samsung going to be next? Is Google going to be next? Or is that a hard no?
Google would be shooting themselves in the
Right.
I mean, their whole business model is based on using that data, collecting it, and selling it. So
Samsung could. That's not their business. They're a hardware company, but they also have to use Android, and they're very close partners with Google. So what will probably happen, assuming this rolls out as expected next month, and so the app developers will figure out a way to not so much get around it, but work with it. Facebook and Google, they're going to have to figure out how they can use this, whether it's through pop-ups, whether it's through explanations on the app, whatever it is, because, it's not all bad. Like targeted advertising isn't necessarily a blanket evil. It can be
geographically based advertising.
Particularly
where you
that,
are matters too.
Small businesses. I mean, there is a benefit to it if done correctly. The problem is, what happens is we buy a shirt and we get 30,000 pop-up ads or not pop-up banner ads and things for more shirts. Like if they do it in the right way, it can be a good thing. They can use that data to really deliver things to consumers that they want. And I think that they're going to try to figure out a middle ground between what Apple is asking them to do and what their investors need from them, which is, profit. Yeah. And once that is figured out, then we'll see something come to Android phones in the sense that, there are going to be a number of people that see this and they say, hey, like, why is my phone tracking me when the iPhone isn't? Why do I have to go through all these hoops to stop Google from looking at my data when Apple people just press a button? So Google's going to have to respond in some way.
That's a good point.
But I think it'll take we need to see where this ends up, like what Facebook and Google and other companies do with iOS 14.5 once it releases.
I do think too that people are more cognizant of privacy issues and the fact that they, who was it? Was it Jobs or someone who said, if they're offering you something for free, you're the product, and that's really the case here.
I think Tim Cook has been. I don't know if he said that exact quote, but he's been the person over the last 5 years or so that has, not that Steve Jobs wasn't into privacy, but it wasn't as much of an issue when he was running the company.
Right.
Now that the iPhone is so prevalent and mobile ads is so prevalent and these things are at the forefront, it really came to a head with that the terrorism case in San Bernardino, California, when they were trying to unlock an iPhone. And they basically said, help us do this. Let create a back door for us so we can get into this person's phone. And don't worry, we won't use it for anybody else but this phone. And Tim Cook and Apple said, and they fought it in court, and it became a real kind of a real issue, not just there because that case went away because they cracked it, for lack of a better word, illegally. But it's been an issue ever since, and Apple took that, that hill that they were on and stuck a flag in there and said, we're not leaving. We're going to be the privacy leaders in this space across all, not just biometrics and unlocking and encryption, but everything. And we've really seen a change in the last 2 or 3 versions of iOS and the iPhone that really put privacy, not just first, but also foremost.
They're really leaning into that too. I mean, you're even hearing people like the FBI director and others at the top echelons of government saying, "Well, we just want this little back door put in, but some of these companies just won't do it." But Apple's really has maintained its stance all along, and in fact strengthened it, which is part of what this does.
It's been proven that once that back door exists, it's
forget it.
Yeah.
Yes. Everybody goes through it.
Of course. People use it to look at wives and girlfriends and husbands. It's a mess. It once that exists, it's over.
Yeah.
Right.
Even if it's in like the NSA or something, it's not going to just be used for one, a real important cases where they have to get at information.
Yeah, and leaving any back door open is also just going to make you more vulnerable.
You're less protected.
Exactly. So we've got a great question from LinkedIn, not necessarily about privacy, more about internet connection. So this viewer asked, Do you have any suggestions for those who have bad connections to the internet, a valid signal boost or server for those? I think some of this got like jumbled. I think some typos, but I think just valid signal boost or server for those out in like far reaching areas. So not necessarily I don't think the answer's, 5G yet. Maybe
Right.
it will eventually, but do either of you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, the equipment matters because you might have a bad connection and then your equipment might be making that connection not so much worse, but not taking advantage of the most it could get. So check where your router is positioned. For one, that's the biggest thing. A lot of people put them in a closet and you're degrading 50 to 70% of your signal immediately. I know most of them aren't very pretty, but you want it to be somewhere where the signal can get out, because Wi-Fi gets degraded by walls and cabinets and windows and all these things. So you want it to be clear. And my other suggestion is mesh networking.
Bingo.
Is a big one. If you can afford like a Wi-Fi 6 router or Wi-Fi 6E now, that's the top of the line. They're very expensive, but even Amazon Eero or a lower end Orbi, like you'll see massive results. Even if you have like a router and like an extender or something, if you get a mesh networking router with 2 or 3 satellites around your home or your apartment or whatever you're living in, all those little dead spots, they'll just basically go away.
Yeah, exactly what Michael said. I was just going to say, in terms of a mesh router, I had to do that here at the house because I got some dead spots and a very large backyard.
I think I helped with
you did. Michael was the one who steered me correctly, and this was last year. And Michael, you were correct. I mean, the thing is, to the original question, if you've got just one base station or access point, and that's got to take care of a whole house and or outdoor areas, you almost need some kind of repeater or mesh network to extend that out. And once you do that, I mean, I can get speeds all the way to the back part of the yard or the front of the house or whatever. I don't think about it anymore.
Right.
That's great.
And you don't have to worry about walls and bricks and everything else blocking the signal.
So it kind of seems like you're going to have to be working with the cards that you're dealt, but you can make it a little bit better regardless of what sort of signal you're working with already.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. I think that's really great advice. So I don't know if you guys have any more burning thoughts on privacy or 5G. And to our audience, if you have any like last questions that you want to get in before we sign off about 5G, your Wi-Fi connection and data privacy, do send them right now. If not, we'll get to them after the fact. But I think that's pretty much all for us. So Mike, Ken, I really appreciate you guys coming in and chatting. I think it's 2 exciting things for consumers and enterprise users alike with these 2 recent decisions. So thank you guys so much.
Sure.
Thanks.
And thank you all so much for watching this episode of Today in Tech. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. And if you're watching us over on LinkedIn, be sure to go over to YouTube. You can go to the IDG Tech Talk channel on YouTube and you can subscribe over there. We're live over there too, so you can watch it in either place, but we've got a lot more videos over on YouTube. And be sure to hit the bell icon in the corner so you're notified every single time we post a new video once you do subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and